Hello everybody, hope you're well. I've just come on to explain a few things what I've been doing today. I've had quite an easy day. I did a little bit of retouching this morning, and then this afternoon, while the weather was quite nice, I've decided to go out and to look at some lights. I need some studio lights for my business. Some of the ones that I've got in the studio, they've not really been looked after very well, not by me, by people that have rented the studio, and I need to replace them with some new ones. So I wanted something around the 1,000 joules marker. I wanted something that was strong and robust, and something that worked easily, so people could, when I'm not in the studio and people are renting the studio, where they could just go and use them quite simply. So I went to look at some Broncolor, some Elinchrom, and I already use Godox now, so I'm really happy with using those, and they've been great lights over the last few years. I went to a few shops today, so I looked at some Broncolor lights first. They were really well built, extremely expensive, but well built. Then I looked at some Elinchrom ones. They were moderately expensive, but they were also just as equally well built as the Broncolor. And then I looked at some Godox lights, and I'm used to Godox lights. The casings aren't as solid. It doesn't feel as heavily well built, but it certainly feels solid. And one of the things that I've been acutely aware of that I need to check with lighting when I buy it is that when you tighten the light up to adjust the angle of it, those brackets are the weak link. They are the weak link. And if you haven't got a good bracket to move it around, and you haven't got a good tight bracket, and you put a big reflector on, you put it on and then it just suddenly starts to droop down. So you do need good tripods, and you do need good brackets on the actual light. So anyway, I went to the first shop and I looked at some Broncolor. Absolutely wonderful lights. I can actually tell you what they were. It was a Broncolor Cirrus 800 Wi-Fi RF S2. And the price of that was £1,810. I'll put that on now so you can have a quick look at it while I'm talking. So as you can probably see, it's a really nice light. It looks a little bit old-fashioned to me, but it was a good light. It's very, very well made. Easy, very simple, very toned down buttons. Really nice piece of kit. Can't complain about it at all. I also looked at a twin set of lights with the power pack. They were about nearly 6,000 quid, and so I'll rule that out straight away. I don't want to spend that sort of money on lighting to also have a power pack and it to almost feel like it's tying me down. So once I'd been to the first shop, I went to the second shop, which was it was a place called the Flash Centre in Birmingham. Brilliant customer service. I spoke to a guy there called Kevin. Really looked after me. Completely unbiased. Told me the pluses and the minuses of the lights. Really helpful guy. So thanks, Kevin. I'm not being paid for any of this, by the way. So the best thing about this shop is they're all there for you to look at. So at one point I'd got my right hand on an Elinchrom, and I'd got my left hand on the Godox, and so I could feel the cases and I could see all the buttons and the knobs and see how they work together. Now I'm going to be honest with you, the way they felt was that the Elinchrom was probably, it felt better built than the Godox. And the Elinchrom was, it was the ELC Pro HD 1000. The funny thing is the Broncolor was only 800. So that was the 1,000. And the Godox was what I already use in the studio, and I've owned quite a few of them, was the DP 1000 Mark III. So the casing they both look solid. The casing felt slightly cheaper. It didn't feel so solid. Not by any means did it feel cheap. It didn't feel cheap. It felt, all of the three lights felt great, and probably the Godox is probably the most difficult one to use, but I've used that for probably 4 years, and I'm quite used to the way all the buttons work and everything, so that seemed really easy for me. So the question I'm going to ask you is, if you're a young photographer, or if you're a part-time photographer, you've got 3 lights to choose from. And you know, this doesn't apply to me because we've got a good photographic business that we make good money on. And so to a certain extent, I could buy any light that I liked. But I'm going to call bullshit with a lot of these lighting experts and photographers. Some photographers, I've heard them say, oh, you can't use Godox for a professional job. And lots of people do on a regular basis use Godox. And then the next thing they say is that, oh, but I've got my own kit in the studio, but when I go on a job, I rent. So I always struggle with this because you don't rent anything. What you do is you put that onto your client's bill. So if you've spent £800 on rental, you add 10% to it probably, and then bill that to your client, which makes the job even more expensive. So I'm not sure whether these people are deliberately trying to make other photographers feel inferior, whether they are being paid by Godox or Broncolor or Elinchrom. But I can tell you this, right? I've got 3 lights that I've looked at today. I've got the Broncolor at 1,800. I've got the Elinchrom that was 1,090. And I've got the Godox that was 397. The Godox was 1,000 joules. The Broncolor Cirrus was 800, and the Elinchrom was 1,090 pounds. So I'm going to go with the Godox again. The Godox has served me well for the last 5 years, and before that I used Bowens, which are now manufactured by Wex, which they are actually Godox. So I'm going to carry on using Godox, and I'm not going to be swayed by the big advertising companies and photographers on YouTube telling me that they're inferior. One of the reasons that lighting companies say that you need these expensive lights is for the colour balance. One of the things that photographers have said to me before is, if you take 50 pictures on a Broncolor or a Pro Photo, and then you take 50 pictures on a Godox, the colour balance fluctuates on a Godox. I think it's bullshit. Prove it to me. I think it's bullshit. Plus the fact, most photographers I know calibrate the screens, calibrate the lights, colour balance everything anyway. And a lot of photographers, once they've shot all this clarity, they then put presets onto it. So I'm going to call bullshit on a lot of these lighting companies. I'm going to call bullshit on a lot of these photographers that are telling you that you must use Broncolor or Pro. And I'm going to call bullshit on the whole, I would nearly swore then, on the whole scenario. If you are comfortable using Godox, you use Godox, because I'm telling you now, I'm a very expensive photographer to book, and I'm using Godox all day. I'm using Godox all day. And I've only ever found one fault. The older halogen lights, when photographers left the light on all day, the light got extremely hot, as it did with Bowens, as it did with the old Broncolors. And sometimes you could melt the lighting ring, or the screws had come loose on there. But those days are gone. So I'd just like to thank Kevin one more time at the Flash Centre. And I'm going to recommend Godox. Go with Godox all day long. If you want to waste an extra, what is it, 1,200 quid for a light that's not so powerful, you go with that. Oh, and there's one last point, really simple. Most photographers know that the closer you get the light to the model, the softer the light is. So you put on a big beauty dish or a big reflector, and you get that as close as you possibly can, and that gives you a really soft, beautiful, glowing light. Then if you put a board underneath, that bounces the light up, so it's like a butterfly. If you move the light further away, the light gets much harsher. So I want to put this to you. If you use an SK 400 Mark 3V, that's only a 400. If you put that in front of the model, and I always like to keep it about arm's length away from the model, your flash reading with a meter is going to work out to f22 plus, maybe higher than f22. Why would you need anything more powerful than a 400 in the first place? So I'm telling you this, you could actually shoot with an MS 300 light that close and you wouldn't need anything else. And when I shoot with my DP 1000s in the studio, they're only probably down to a third of the power. So you really don't need all that power. You really don't need a 3,200 pack. You don't need to be spending that sort of money or being influenced in exactly the same way that you do not need. I use Canon and I use Hasselblad. You don't need a 60 megapixel camera. I use 5D Mark IVs and R5s and Hasselblads. So I do use good camera equipment. But someone said to me today, I'm saving up for a proper camera, and it was a Fuji X-T4. It is a proper camera. Don't believe the hype where these people are trying to sell you things all the time. Anyway, that's enough of me having a rant. I'm going to list the things that you can buy, and you can take a look yourself and see what you think. This is my opinion. It's not sponsored by anyone. I've not got anybody telling me what I should and shouldn't say. I'm just using common sense and watching my bank balance. Anyway, I'd love you to subscribe, like, dislike if you don't like what I've just said, and let me know your thoughts underneath. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you use as well. It'd be interesting to start a conversation about it all. Anyway, have a great evening. I'm going to go and get me a glass of wine and sit on the sofa. So speak to you all soon.